What if the Louvre galleries were not only populated with sculptures, paintings, and ancient objects seemingly without life, but were the meeting place of phantom silhouettes, heirs of a glorious past, and ready to parade before our eyes? What if we opened the museum's display cases like we half open an old family wardrobe, ready to discover buried treasures? Medieval hangings, portraits of kings, Renaissance tapestries, fabrics with mysterious patterns, and much more. Welcome to this new episode of my Fashion Stories Box podcast, a rather unusual episode halfway between art history and fashion history. Today, I invite you to step inside a museum, and not just any museum. We're talking about the Louvre, and explore the relationship between artistic masterpieces and contemporary fashion. The Louvre Couture exhibition, currently running until July the 21st, 2025, reminds us something. Fashion has always been about looking back, a past that's been embroidered, sculpted, painted, framed, and even worn. From the Byzantine Empire to the Second Empire via the late Middle Ages and Marie Antoinette, follow me on a visual and textile journey in search of what today's creators read in the folds of the Louvre artworks. Louvre Couture, France's largest museum, allying itself the country's trademark. What could be more exciting for a fashion history enthusiast? Now, close your eyes and let yourself be guided. I'll take you on a tour of this extraordinary exhibition. Imagine that once you've passed under the Louvre Pyramid, you follow the signs and find yourself at the entrance to the Richelieu wing. These signs invite you to head towards the Department of Objets d'Art. Your curiosity is piqued, as is your imagination. You may have already seen some photos showing these magnificent creations from 45 French and international houses, blending naturally with decorative ridges and furnishing objects from the past. At the entrance, you're greeted by a magnificent dress from the House of Dior. You pick up a brochure whose title, Louvre Couture, Objets d'Art, Objets de Mode, wakes your anticipation. You learn that the dress that greeted you was not chosen at random. This is an evening gown called Musée du Louvre, Louvre Museum, created in 1949. Just a coincidence? I don't think so. But without further ado, let's begin this tour that illustrates the intimate links between art and fashion, between past and present. Visiting the Louvre Couture exhibition is a bit like a treasure hunt. Treasure hunt whose goal is to find modern creations among the objects of art of the past and to guess their links. And sometimes it's really difficult to distinguish between the two. Dresses, shoes, bags, and other items are so well inserted that it's hard to find them. Like this magnificent pair of Hermes gloves in glazed lambskin and beige and ecru suede lambskin from the Spring-Summer 1996 collection, completely at home alongside the reliquary arms of St. Louis and St. Luke, or the gold metal bodysuit paved with diamond motifs from Mugler's Fall-Winter 1995-1996 collection in the display case among the gilded tablecloths. Not to mention the famous armor dress from Balenciaga's Fall-Winter 2023-2024 Haute Couture collection, mirrored with the armor who was said to have belonged to Henry II and dated around 1560. And what about this selection put under a glass display including a Mugler arm, a Louis Vuitton bag, another by Christian Louboutin, a Chanel jewel glove, blending so well into this chivalrous universe that it becomes difficult to tell that these are modern pieces and not antique objects. In short, it would be a waste of time to list all the works of the designers exhibited and their ways of blending into the universe of the different pieces of the exhibition. But this perfectly shows how a museum and its works are an inexhaustible source of inspiration for current brands. And this inspiration can come from a pattern seen on a chest or a piece of furniture, a color palette, the atmosphere of a tapestry or painting, an ornamentation technique such as beading, trimmings, religious embroideries, draping, or the imagination, the fantasy associated with a period, an historical personality. I've selected for you 3 modern creations on display, and I will analyze their connections and possible inspirations with their surrounding objects. Because of its simplicity and subtle evocation of an empire known for its opulence, my first choice is the evening gown from Yves Saint Laurent's Fall-Winter 1997-1998 Haute Couture collection. This sublime black velvet dress with its off-the-shoulder boat neckline adorned with gold embroideries and encrusted with precious stones. It's tucked away in a corner in one of the first rooms of the exhibition, but deserves your full attention. Yves Saint Laurent has always been a great lover of art, and his collections have regularly been inspired by artists. And you're probably thinking of the Mondrian dress, a huge hit of the 60s. Here, this black velvet dress is mirrored with a reliquary crown dating from the 1250s, 13,000s, demonstrating the opulence of religious creations and echoing the equally important opulence of the Byzantine Empire. My second choice is a Schiaparelli dress from the Inferno Spring-Summer 2023 Haute Couture collection. More specifically, it features a black wool crepe jacket and skirt set with pronounced shoulders, a sign of power, and well-emphasized waist. The main originality comes from the imposing palinating brass mask representing the face, shoulders, and upper bust of a woman. Her hairstyle gives the impression that this woman is veiled, as saints were represented in churches during the Middle Ages. This outfit was apparently inspired by a sculpture by Gaston Lachaise entitled Standing Woman from 1932. It may also recall reliquary busts containing the relics of saints, such as that of Saint Ferdinand, exhibited right next to Daniel Roseberry's creation. Although personally, I find the resemblance more striking with a gilded copper funerary mask from the end of the 13th century from the Papillière Priory in Maine-et-Loire, exhibited in another room. The shape, the color, this impression of a scarf plastered on the head lead me to make this connection. And my third choice is this Renaissance-style Chanel dress exhibited in a tapestry gallery and from the 2012-2013 Métiers d'Art collection, Paris and Edinburgh. Inspired by Mary Stuart, the legendary 16th century Queen of Scotland who spent her childhood at the court of Catherine de' Medici during the Renaissance, this outfit, composed of a dress in white silk and tweed cigalline, a breastplate necklace in Guinea fowl, pheasant, pigeon, and duck feathers, a belt and a necklace in gold-plated metal and adorned with feathers, evokes the puffed sleeves and the ruffed collars in vogue at the time, while the shades of colors and the heaviness of the fabrics echo the magnificent tapestry entitled The Month of December, or The Sign of Capricorn, or The Wild Boar Hunt from the so-called Hunt of Maximilian's tapestry, dating from 1520-1550, which serves as its frame. These 3 choices of analysis are of course very subjective, and I invite you to select yours and practice identifying the elements that could have served as a reference for the creations. Almost 100 works from the houses are currently exhibited in around 40 rooms, located between the Richelieu wing and the Sully wing of the Louvre, following a chronological order: Byzantium, Middle Ages, Renaissance, the Baroque period, 18th century, and finally, the 19th century. Unfortunately for me, on the day of my visit, the rooms corresponding to the 18th and 19th centuries were not accessible to the public. I was therefore not able to see in real life the set from the Chanel Spring-Summer 2019 haute couture collection whose jacket embellishments and embroideries and colors are inspired by a chest of drawers dating from 1742, or the majestic red embroidered moire dress by John Galliano for Dior from the Autumn-Winter 2004-2005 haute couture collection and visible in the Napoleon III apartments, where it has its place, honestly. All this to say that you only need to walk through the galleries of the Louvre to feel the textile power of history. Outside of the exhibition rooms, every corner of the museum is full of elements that could tomorrow inspire a haute couture dress or runway jacket. In Louvre Couture, it's not just historical garments that interact with contemporary fashion, but an entire decorative universe. Every pattern, every texture, every nuance can be transformed into a couture detail. The art of furniture, decoration, and interior designs thus become the material for clothing. And here, the Louvre becomes a vast texture cabinet, a library of materials to be consulted like an inspiration notebook. The designers don't stop at silhouettes. They listen to what the walls, the frames, the decor have to say to them. But be careful. It's not just a simple copy-paste between past and present. Here we are talking about the conversation between applied arts and the arts of clothing, the arts of appearance. Inspiration is never a simple quotation. It involves an act of reading, certainly, but also of imagination and adaptation. By mixing decorative objects from several periods and contemporary creations, the Louvre Couture exhibition seeks to demonstrate that designers don't copy the past. They reinterpret it, they shift it, and sometimes they disrupt it. And most importantly, they engage in a dialogue with it. At Valentino, Pier Paolo Chioli imagined Gothic-inspired silhouettes with high collars, long sleeves, and embroidery reminiscence of the Bayeux tapestry or medieval illuminations. But everything is filtered through a contemporary, fluid, and inclusive aesthetic. Dior drew inspiration from the gilding of the Grand Siècle, creating ultra-fine metallic embroidery applied to sheer tulle, while Chanel, for its part, played with Byzantine, Renaissance jewels, and the Rococo textures of the 18th century salons to enrich its modern suits with pearls, buttons, and braid. Color is also language. The carmine reds, the royal blues, the pearly whites, the emerald greens found in other works become elements of the palette. A palette that is not nostalgic, but reincarnated. The past is therefore not has been something retro, dusty, boring, at least if I believe the list of contemporary designers who drew on it to create collections more magnificent than the last, taking us on a journey through time, making us dream. Of course, we find there the regulars of those into the history of fashion, such as Dior, Chanel, Dolce & Gabbana, Schiaparelli, Saint Laurent, Balmain, or Alexander McQueen. Some of them have even made the history of fashion and art their signature. But we also find names that we did not expect. At least, I did not expect them, such as Charles de Vilmorin, Jacques Mus, Alaya, Balenciaga, Marine Serre, or Jonathan Anderson. In the exhibition catalog, several designers discuss their need to immerse themselves in history to rediscover a sense of time and visual depth. For them, museums are places for creative renewal, much like a fashion designer might leaf through an old book of sketches or archival fabrics. Something that Maria Grazia Curie confirms. Museums, whether through their collections or their exhibitions, are a true source of inspiration in my creative process. Like Jonathan Anderson mentions, I like to look at things by putting them into perspective. For example, by looking at photographs that seem very contemporary while they may have been taken in the 1940s. I always find it enjoyable to juxtapose the past and modernity. And Marine Serres shares, art history is central to my methodology, not as a simple source of aesthetic inspiration, but as a basis for dialogue between eras. It manifests itself in the form of images, symbols, and even techniques that I revisit. As for historical inspiration, Iris van Herpen says that she has a weakness for surrealism, the Renaissance, and Art Nouveau. Erdem Moraliolu mentions having always been drawn to episodes of transitions, periods on the cusp of great upheavals. The 1930s before the Second World War are an example, as is the end of the 18th century before the Revolution. A perspective shared by Jean-Charles de Castelbajac, who mentions pivotal periods, transitions, those historical moments where we move from one era to another. But why does fashion still look back at history, the one with a capital H? There's a growing desire in these trends to summon ancient art into something profound. This isn't a mere stylistic effect or fashion effect, nor a decorative whim. It's a movement of memory. In an era where everything moves fast, where images are scrolled by continuously, fashion seems to be seeking a form of encourage to hit the pause button. It draws from the works of past centuries a slowness, a refinement, a density. It rediscovers the desire for detail, gesture, material. It is a way for fashion to honor what time has left intact, the legacy of centuries, millennia of dedication. As I mentioned in the episode on Chateaucourt aesthetics that I invite you to listen if you didn't do it yet, fashion needs roots to establish itself in something larger, something older. It responds to a contemporary need, that of reassurance in an uncertain, disrupted era, during which points of references change and become blurred. And what could be more reassuring than the past? A return to one's root, something that doesn't change. And fashion is always in search of beauty, and the history of art is an ode to beauty, to the beauty of the past, to what our ancestors were capable of achieving in the name of this beauty. But be careful, this dive into the past doesn't rhyme with backward-looking attitude. Quite the opposite. It's often about deconstructing that past, rereading it differently, injecting new bodies, feminism maybe, queer, non-Western narratives, to transform heritage into a tool for reflection on our modern society. And then fashion is an internal cycle, an internal restart, a cycle mixing and blurring past, present, and future. And the Louvre Couture exhibition is a masterful example of this dynamic. The dresses, the shoes, the accessories on display are not reproductions. They are projections. Poetic, sometimes poetical interpretation of works from the past. Curtain becomes a cape, a frieze, a breastplate, a painting detail, an embroidery. And by wearing a piece inspired by history, we pay homage not only to the modern artisans behind the sublime creations of the haute couture collections, but also to those anonymous, lost in time and their era, who made the creation, the transmission, and the perfection of techniques and know-how possible. Fashion looks to history not to look itself in, but to free new forms from it. It's time to leave the Louvre and let these visual impressions invade our unconscious. All the fabrics, religious relics, paintings, velvets, tapestries, and jewelry are the embodiment of so many ghosts that one day will find their reincarnation in a haute couture piece, coming back to life before our eyes. Louvre Couture is proof that fashion never forgets its roots. It weaves them, transforms them, and enhances them. It makes them speak through tulle, bread, and inspired cuts, always creating a dialogue, a conversation. And if you too could choose a detail, a pattern, a color from an old work to make a dress or a jacket of tomorrow, what would you choose? Thank you for listening to this episode of my Fashion Stories Box podcast. Find the Box of Time Louvre Couture edition on Instagram to explore references, styles, and symbols. If you would like to know more about the exhibition and the links between fashion museums and art, I recommend you the exhibition catalogue Louvre Couture, Objets d'art, Objets de mode, the special issue of the Beaux-Arts magazine on the exhibition, and the book Défilé au Louvre by Sophie Fontanelle, as well as the downloadable educational file on the exhibition. Feel free to share this episode, to comment on it, and to use it as a guided tour through the artistic and historical inspirations of fashion designers. I'm Catherine, and you've just listened to another episode of my Fashion Stories Box podcast, a podcast about stories in fashion history. See you soon for a new journey through fashion, fabulous history.